Welcome to the Growing Tall Poppies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nat Green, and I'm so excited to have you join me as we discuss what it means to navigate your way through post-traumatic growth and not just survive, but to thrive after trauma. Through our podcast, we will explore ways for you to create a life filled with greater purpose, self-awareness, and a deep inner peace. Through integrating the many years of knowledge and professional experience, as well as the wisdom of those who have experienced trauma firsthand, we will combine psychology, accelerated approaches, coaching, and personal experience to assist you to learn, to grow, and to thrive. I hope to empower you to create deeper awareness and understanding and stronger connections with yourself and with others, whilst also paving the way for those who have experienced trauma and adversity to reduce their suffering and become the very best versions of themselves in order to thrive. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Hi, and welcome back to Growing Tall Poppies. I'm Dr. Nat Green, and I am really excited and grateful today to bring you our next guest on the podcast. It's my pleasure to welcome an amazing lady who has agreed to come and chat with us today about both her personal and her professional experience and to share her wisdom and wealth of knowledge with us. So let me start by welcoming Alexandra. We'll also chat with her and call her Lexi through the show. Alexandra Reid. She is a creative wellness coach who helps high-achieving women recover from burnout and reconnect with their inner calm. After years working in science and medical technology, she experienced the toll of constantly pushing through stress and emotional overload. And now she supports women who feel the same, especially those who are sensitive, driven, and quietly exhausted. And I know that there's a lot of our listeners who are very much in that boat right now. And Alexandra uses mindfulness, neuroscience, and art therapy inspired practices and offers gentle tools that help her clients process emotions, release pressure, and feel like themselves again. So welcome, Lexi. It's so great to have you here.
Well, thank you, Nat. I'm very happy to be on the podcast. Glad we got to connect. I know we're a few oceans apart, so that's terrific. I'll start where you usually start, at the beginning. So I did the typical academic route. I always loved doing both biology and art when I was in high school. But my parents, let's just say, strongly encouraged me to go the science route because they felt that was definitely more likely for job prospects. Okay. So I went into biology. I fell in love with molecular biology, and I followed a master's. I took on a PhD. I even did a postdoc. And by the time I got through the academic ladder, so to speak, I realized that I was tired of doing what my postdoc friends and I they call it research because you redo it all the time.
Yes, I can so relate to that.
Exactly. So it was, much as I love experimenting and discovering new things, the daily grind of showing up in the lab and just doing a lot of the grunt work over and over again. And I thought, okay, I've done this. Let's see if I can do science in a different way. And I got into working for a not-for-profit, which led me to the federal government doing grant reviews. So I was on the side where I got to read all kinds of cutting-edge research proposals from everywhere, like biology, physics, chemistry, engineering. And that was fantastic because I got to go out and meet these young professors, quite often getting started in their career. And the grant that I helped look after was actually an industry collaboration grant. So they needed to have a company on board to partner on the research. So it was great. I got to go out in the community, network, meet lots of people. And that's what actually led me into my most recent role, working for a medical device company. I was out at a networking event talking, and they said, we could really use your expertise in our business development. We do a lot of consulting for companies to build medical devices for them. And so that was the most recent company. It's based here in Victoria, called Starfish Medical. And I worked there for a number of years, first in the business development, like I mentioned, and then I moved over to the quality assurance and regulatory affairs department, so QA/RA work, which is very, very detail oriented because essentially we are the last stop for the medical devices being safe and effective to be used on people. They have to go to Health Canada, FDA to be approved. And it's our job in that department to make sure not only is all the paperwork in place, but that the devices pass all the testing. And so I did that for a number of years. And it was during the pandemic, we landed a large government contract to develop emergency ventilators. And so obviously during the pandemic, there was a lot of pressure for us to get these ready and out the door as fast as possible. So we ended up working, especially our department. We were a small department. We were wearing a lot of hats and working closely with the engineers. And we worked pretty much 24/7 to get these ventilators approved and in the hands of the Canadian government so they could get in the hands of Canadians. Of course, I'm working from home like everyone else. I'm always on call. I ended up setting a desk in my bedroom because we were lacking space and I had young kids. And so pretty much I'd wake up in the morning, go to my desk, and then check it throughout the evening and go to sleep and do it all over again. And it really began taking a toll. It disrupted my sleep. The stress got to me, as it would to, I think, most people. And
Definitely.
I didn't know how to turn off. That was the other big issue. And I've always done fine art on the side, but I found during this time I couldn't even paint. I was blocked with this, what I learned was called burnout. At the time, I was just like, I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about work, but I don't feel like I'm being as effective as I could be because I'm not sleeping. Round and round it goes. And it was during that time that I thought, I really miss being in the studio, but I can't face tackling on a big painting. And to be fair, the galleries I used to show on had closed because again, it's COVID. There were a lot of artists at the time suddenly stuck in their studios. There were no shows, there were no galleries. And being an artist didn't feel like a great relief either. But I turned to looking into art therapy because I thought maybe that's an avenue I can explore. And honestly, that was great because it took the pressure off completing a final finished artwork. Like I dissociated the creativity from needing to produce something that looked good. Something up until that point, I'd been very focused. If I spent time in my studio, I needed to be productive. I needed to make something I could bring to the gallery, I could sell. And that sucked all the joy out too. So now here I have work burning me out. Here I can't work in my studio. But I started doing these little simple creative exercises. They are almost like doodles. There was the mindfulness aspect. And the nice thing about them is they were quick and there was no pressure to make it look good. I don't know if you've ever played Pictionary, but sometimes not well, exactly. But that's what took the pressure off. It didn't have to look good. It was just more of a way to getting my thoughts out on the paper, both a combination of pictures and words. And it actually, and then I was like, oh, I am feeling better for doing this. So that's what started me to self-study into the neuroscience behind creativity, the neuroscience behind what is my brain doing while I'm doing this stuff? Because I am a scientist at heart and I wanted to marry my two interests together. Anyway, long story short, as you do, I started looking into, I thought at first of doing creativity coaching, but I really like the idea of using creativity for wellness. And that's why I decided to call myself a creative wellness coach rather than a creativity coach, because my goal is to use creativity to, much like you've got like a Fitbit to count your steps. A Fitbit is a wellness device. It's proactively trying to keep you fit versus like a pacemaker. It's a medical device. It's keeping your heart pumping. So there's a difference between a medical device to keep you healthy. It's treating you, it's diagnosing you, and a wellness device. So I like to use creativity as essentially a wellness device. So yeah, and the women I work with are very much holding a mirror up to myself where I was 5 years ago. It's
Mhm.
hard to believe 5 years ago was the pandemic.
No, it's crazy, isn't it? It just goes so fast. And yet we still see so many consequences of it in our everyday life, don't we?
It is. And in some ways, I'd say the stress has almost boomeranged.
I
We
agree.
all dealt with the stress of the pandemic, and there's a sense of solidarity. We'll all get through it together. And then, certainly here in North America, there's been a huge push with the return to office. And,
Same here.
you know, exactly. And suddenly, especially women, we juggle a lot. We look
Mhm.
after the home, we look after the kids, we can look after elderly parents. And now we got used to having maybe a hybrid system where we could build in that flexibility of
Mhm.
juggling our jobs on our own terms and still deal with all of these, what they call it the invisible labor, but it certainly doesn't feel very invisible when you're driving your kids around to appointments or driving parents
Mm.
around to their appointments and
Yeah.
then still trying to make dinner and clean the house. So
Hmm.
I would say in some ways the stress has ramped up even more after COVID. At least so I've seen with a lot of the women I'm talking to now. It's kind of like we dealt with that, and then suddenly now there's even more stress now that we're back. And yeah, so these are the women that I'm working with. Is often I do say the women I work with are the niche I look at is women in STEM, so science,
Hmm.
technology,
Yeah.
engineering, and math. Which isn't to say that women outside those fields certainly aren't expressing burnout. I've worked in all the fields. I've worked in academia, I've worked in government, I've worked in corporate. So I have a pretty good sense of some of the challenges they're facing.
Mm.
And these fields still tend to be male dominated.
Absolutely.
So there's not just the challenge of doing your job well, but it's often doing it better than your male counterpart because you're being judged on an uneven playing field that way.
Oh, how many times do we hear that you've got to do it twice as well to prove yourself? So there's that extra level that you've got to push. So it's no wonder at all when you were on 24/7 that there was that huge burnout experience because you're also trying to make sure you had to do more to prove yourself, to keep up, to be even recognized, despite the fact that you were already doing a great job.
And I think a lot of times women, certainly the women I speak to, there's a big issue with giving ourselves permission to rest. Um,
Yes, I hear that all the time. It's a common topic that we talk about on the podcast because, I think we're also intergenerational stuff. That's what's happened. You just keep doing it and it's passed on and it's passed on. We have really good teachers who self sacrifice and keep going, and you don't have time to rest. But the reality is, we have to rest, especially
oh,
when
we
we have
do.
burnout.
And we never give ourselves a chance to recover. We think, oh, I took a night off and now I'm going to work twice as hard to make up for it. So
Mhm.
you think you're giving yourself a break, but you're still pushing yourself as hard, if not harder, afterwards. It's often when they often say you get really sick on vacation because
All the
suddenly,
time.
yeah, exactly. Here you are finally taking that well-deserved break, and your body goes, "Oh, it's about time," and it just
Mm,
collapses upon itself.
definitely. So you talked about when you were deep in that period and then looking back, you thought, oh, yeah, now I know it was burnout. So there was sleeplessness, that being on all the time. What other symptoms did you notice with your burnout?
Definitely, like it affected my moods. I would say I always joke about using my mom voice, which I realize is a really screechy, not pleasant voice to use. I had a short fuse, right, with my family. Um, I just seemed to be on edge all the
Mhm.
time. And again, it was very hard. And this is something I'm learning for myself. I'm doing a lot more meditation and mindfulness for myself,
Mhm.
is I wasn't present in any of my moments. I was always thinking about the next task that I should be doing. And a lot of neuroscience has showed we can't truly multitask. We just quickly switch between tasks.
Mhm.
And studies have shown that we lose up to almost, I believe, 40% of our productivity due to this, what we think is being productive
Mm.
multitasking. but we're not. And again, that adds up after a while. That
Mm,
sense of the other part of burnout, which I didn't expect, is I knew I was doing something important, but it
mhm,
started to not feel that way. Like it was almost like I was becoming numb and disengaged.
mhm.
So it was, you almost became an observer of anybody could do this. Why am I here? It's,
Mm,
I lost a bit of that sense of purpose, even though I knew intellectually on paper what we were doing was truly important, but
mhm.
it stopped feeling meaningful to me. And I think it was just my body again protecting itself and shutting
Mm,
down emotions. And certainly what I've read about burnout, there is a very strong disengagement aspect to it as well. And almost disenchantment from what you truly loved before. And then
mhm.
suddenly it's not what you love to do. And you don't know why, because it was something you loved to do before that.
Definitely. And I know one of the things that I talk about a lot on here and in the work that I do with my clients is really about those three brains, the head, the heart, and the gut. And when we go through trauma or experience significant burnout, one of those at least, but usually two, will disconnect. So the head brain keeps going and we overthink and we overanalyze. And the heart brain that feels, we disconnect that from everything else and we go emotional numbing. We go down that route. And that gut stuff is the purpose and the meaning. So it makes sense why when we're really in the midst of that, that they're no longer integrated because it's a safety mechanism. Yeah, and I really loved what you were saying as well about how you got into the art and the art therapy, because obviously, with all your neuroscience work, that was a beautiful way to incorporate the analytical brain, but also the creative brain. So that was amazing. So tell us a bit more when you went down the neuroscience path, what that looked like for you and how you brought them all together in the work you do now.
Yeah, and I'm still learning. There's still new studies coming out all
Hmm.
the time. But one of the biggest things is when you're in an anxious state, like that fight or flight or flop state,
Hmm. Yes,
it's, you can't be creative, right? It's just like that part of your brain is shut off. But
exactly.
even if you can almost force a switch, so maybe it's just, as I said, you just start doodling on a piece of paper, you just start, one of the easy exercises I do is you draw to your breathing, right? You
Hmm.
just actually, and that helps you
Yeah,
slow
that's
down, helps you
fun.
become present, very, and suddenly you're paying attention to your breath and your hand is doing something. And that trips you out of that anxious state and it
Hmm.
puts you into more of what they call the flow state, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah,
But it's almost like literally two parts of your brain. And it's not as easy to say left brain, right brain because they are complementary. It's not
exactly.
as, yeah, it's not as straightforward as switching one, but it's definitely the patterns of the brain that light up are different at that point. And you can definitely see there is various different sectors lighting up that way. I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but it's, if you see two images of doing
Hmm.
one creative activity versus another, and that could be anything creative. It doesn't, I obviously I'm drawn to the visual arts, but it's
Hmm.
true with music.
Music,
It's
yeah.
true. Yeah, music is huge that way. But even things as simple as gardening,
Hmm.
just being out cooking. Yeah, like it's funny when you think of, here I think of cooking as a chore for me, but if I take out the drudgery of making the next meal and I just enjoy cooking
Hmm.
for
Yeah,
cooking's sake, then it is a creative activity. So it's again what they always talk about, what fills your cup, right? So
definitely.
you, if you choose the activities that fill your cup,
Hmm.
that's what helps bring you back to yourself as well. And starting small. That's the other thing is that, like I mentioned, I felt completely blocked to take on a big painting.
Mm.
It was just like, oh, that beyond the blank canvas, it was just the thought of the amount of work. Like it just seemed like too much of a mountain to climb. But I could go into the studio and do a little bit of collage. I could do a little bit of color studies, like just even playing with color, like just literally mixing paints together
Mhm.
was soothing for me. So I think you have to figure out what works for you. But for me, and certainly the women I've been working with, just these little simple exercises. And the nice thing with the art therapy, or art, I say art therapy inspired exercises, because we do a
Mhm.
lot more forward thinking rather than reflective thinking as well with
Okay.
these. And that's what I find is the big difference between therapy and coaching is I find
Mm.
coaching very forward moving towards
Yes.
goals. Whereas, yeah, therapy tends to be more reflective looking backwards. What got you to where you are today as opposed to what
Mm.
you want to get to. So with these exercises, they become artifacts of what your mind was doing, what your emotional state was at the moment you created it.
Mm.
We do another exercise where it's basically you draw like a gingerbread person, very simple, and
Yes.
you do a body scan and you draw the emotions or the tenseness you're feeling in the body or where it feels light, where do you feel grounded? Where does peacefulness live in your body? How do you color code that? What color feels peaceful? What shapes feel peaceful? And you can do that on a daily basis. You could almost take your emotional temperature with a body scan. And, that's a great thing to reflect back on a week later saying, oh, that was full of green, horrible, spiky shapes. And
Mm.
now, like whatever is your personal code for the stress or the anxiety, but it also you realize, oh, I've been keeping it all in my shoulders and in my neck, and maybe I should do some stretching. Like it's another way of bringing self awareness to parts that you may not be thinking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do all kinds of little activities like that.
It's amazing. I love a good body scan. I use a body scan all the time. But I really like that idea of that combination of the gingerbread man and doing that to cross over and really reconnect with yourself and what's going on and visually be able to put it outside yourself as well. So I really like that.
And
Excellent.
it's very simple, right?
It
Like
is.
it's,
I love
and I often tell my clients, you don't need an art studio. Like I quite often when I'm demonstrating on my videos, I'll use my kids' arts school supplies, like the Crayola
it. Mhm.
markers and crayons, right? It's just whatever you have to hand, something that I also tell my clients if you want to go to the art store and spoil yourself, I wouldn't discourage that either.
I bet.
It's what you have to hand as well is just fine. It's just the act of
Mm.
creating that is the healing part.
Yeah. So, what do you think the turning point was for you to recognize that burnout, start being able to go and draw again and engage in that and shift from that merely surviving through to thriving?
It definitely took time. I will say that. And it took those small steps of giving myself permission to take time out to do that and not feel guilty or selfish that I was taking the time for myself and not, quote, wasting time in the studio because I wasn't producing something for a gallery. But I had to make a concerted effort of actually, no, I'm going to take this time and talk to my family and say, look, can you make dinner tonight? Can you drive the kids? And I had to work with my family to build that in. So it is definitely that act of taking the first step, but I
Hmm.
realized I needed to do it, right? Because it was not going to be sustainable. I was going to have
Mm.
to step away from something, and I didn't want to step away from the family, and I
No.
couldn't really afford to step away from work. So I'm like, okay, I have to figure out
Mm.
where this balance is. And I'm still learning that balance,
Yeah.
but it is just deciding at some point where this isn't sustainable. And honestly, like the days where you just feel like you're not going to get out of bed, you're like, okay, I got to do something, right? Like this
Hmm.
is not good for anybody. So I don't know if there was a hard turning point,
Hmm.
except for the fact that I was just feeling less and less myself. And my friend said that to me too. I guess maybe that was the other thing, is that I had friends saying, you're usually a lot more upbeat than this, right?
Mm, yeah. Getting
You
that
know, if you,
feedback as well from others rather than just what you were
yes,
thinking in
yeah,
your own head.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it
Um,
sounds like there was some specific things like permission, giving yourself permission, speaking up and communicating what your needs were, and also putting some boundaries in place for yourself.
Boundaries is a big one that comes up
Yeah.
again, both for myself and a lot of my clients.
Definitely.
It's that feeling that I need, everyone relies on me. I can't let them down, right?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the women I work with are very professional, very high performing, got straight A's in school and went on to get promoted, and suddenly they're at this position where they don't have the support beneath them. They've climbed up so high so fast that they haven't built those external supports for themselves,
Mm.
and realizing that they're necessary. One Another activity we do is it's called this personal solar system, and
Mhm.
basically you draw yourself in the center as the sun,
Yeah.
and you start mapping out who's in your orbit, who is closest to you, who's in your inner circle, and then you start looking beyond and who's further out, and who would you like to bring closer, and who have you let drift, and realizing that you let them drift. And then there's also the flip side of who would you like to let drift a
Yeah.
little further
Who do you
out?
want to let go off to go into
Yes,
the solar system on their own in the galaxy? Yes.
exactly. But again, it's that sense of understanding who's in your support network, and again, just paying attention to who you could reach out to or who you'd like to reach out to more.
And I think one of the things as well that you've hinted at there then as well is that the energy drainers, that it's okay to put those boundaries in when we know that the people we hang around impact our own energy and we impact their energy. So when you're hanging around people who are also burnt out, negative, then it drags us down and we drag others down when we're in that state. So I think they're really important things to look at: who's in your solar system and your support network and community. What else do you think is important when you're looking at recovering from burnout, like the women that you work with?
Getting outside, honestly, that's much as I promote being creative, I think also I'm I learned about forest bathing, which is a
Mm-hmm.
Japanese term. I have a beautiful forest path behind my house, and I try to walk out there daily with my dog. And it's funny, like for a while, I could not do sitting meditation. I could not sit still. I was so much in my head, it was not helpful. So I
Oh, I
thought,
hear you. I still can't sit still, but that might be my ADHD.
and getting outside would just, and being in, I'm very fortunate where I live. I can walk to the ocean. I can, walk in
Yeah,
the forest. So I admit
perfect.
I'm very fortunate where I live. But I think even just going to a park and just sitting on a bench surrounded by trees and grass and just taking a few slow, deep breaths for yourself, that makes a huge difference. Just getting, we quote, the sunshine, the vitamin D. I know it's tricky as we're starting to head into shorter days
Mm.
here
Oh,
where I
we've
am.
got the opposite. We've
You've got
just
the opposite.
we've
Yeah, you're
just had,
lucky.
yeah, the solstice and we're moving into the nice warmer, longer days. Sorry.
Yeah,
Just rub it in, but
I
you've
know.
come out of it. You've just
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Oh, we are. And honestly, we're having a beautiful fall right now. Just that perfect blue crispness.
Yeah.
And so I do know the rain will be coming. That's something that we get a lot of here is
Yes.
rain.
Yeah. Be prepared
Yeah.
for the rain and
Yeah.
we'll prepare for the warmth and the heat.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
that's something I encourage the women I work with too, is trying to do two things, is call a friend and go for a walk. So even if you're
mhm,
just doing, and I've actually started trying to do that with calling my parents, is I try to schedule a call so I can go out and walk the dog, be
mhm.
outside and have that family connection. And I find it's actually you get so into the conversation that sometimes you realize, oh, I've walked on autopilot. So it's funny, or other times where you realize, oh, this isn't a great conversation, but at least I can look at the trees and enjoy being outside.
And be
So,
present, like you
and
said,
be
that it's
present. Yeah.
really important, because when you're deep in that burnout or trauma recovery, you don't really enjoy that present moment. So that's such a powerful thing, isn't it? To really soak in what's around you, and particularly that grounding in nature, like you've just said. I love that. So if you were to look back at when you were going through the adversity and the stuff that had gone on and your burnout, what do you think some of the key, maybe qualities or personal attributes that you saw in yourself and in your clients, what are they for moving from that trauma into post-traumatic growth or burnout into burnout recovery?
It's building self-confidence. I think a lot of it comes
Mm-hmm.
down to learning to build those internal resources, the
Yeah.
resiliency. They often talk about resiliency, about the ability to bounce back. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more than that. I do think it's that it's like building that. I often think of it as like a coal burning inside, and you want to
Mm-hmm.
fan the coal and keep it going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the energy that's going to keep you going through the day. And I think a lot of people who deal with trauma and burnout, quite literally, that
Yeah.
ember goes out.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it does take some care and some nurturing, self-nurturing to
Mm-hmm.
get it back.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, they don't, I would advise them not to rush it because there's that feeling of, oh, I'm better now. And then you
Yes.
tackle on everything that put you in that position in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think there's that ability to realize once you've burned out, start trying to either change what put you in that position or start noticing some of the warning signs that you may have
Mm.
overlooked or ignored blatantly. That's the other thing
Well,
is that whole feeling of, oh, I'll just push through this and realize when you start catching those old patterns that landed you in that position. And we're not perfect, it's an evolving thing, but I think it's building that self confidence, building that self awareness, and again, giving yourself that permission to take a break and not be perfect, right?
oh
I
yeah.
haven't even touched on perfectionism, but
It's there in us high achievers that go down that path. It's always there, isn't it?
exactly. So
Mm.
that's the elephant in the room that,
Yeah.
like I have to be perfect. I have to do this perfectly, or I can't let anyone else do it because they're not going to do it as perfectly as me. So there's,
Yeah. And I would imagine that in that STEM space, that's even more evident.
oh, it is. That's where all the T's and all the I's, it's
Yeah.
that, you know, everything that's very data driven, it's
Mm.
very scrutinized, and it's high pressure and high turnaround.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just, again, that sense of I need to always be on or I'll miss something.
Mm.
And yeah, that definitely, the job in itself creates that sense of pressure. But I do wonder
Definitely.
sometimes if the men feel it as strongly as the women. Because
Mm.
again, I talk to mostly burned out women. So I would be
Yeah.
curious to know about that.
Yeah. And do you think, because that's the world that you've worked in for so long, do you think that there were men in that space who also were burned out but just didn't acknowledge it?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure because there's certainly a lot of cultural conditioning. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure.
God forbid men show their emotions.
Mm.
Like that would be admitting weakness.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so
And
many layers, aren't there, really, to that?
oh,
And
yeah,
years and
yeah,
years of things being ingrained, and yeah, so many systemic issues as well.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, but again, they wouldn't necessarily be the ones that would show up to tell me about it.
No, no. So being female in that very male oriented industry, How was it for you when you recognized this? Did you let them know what was happening or did you hide it?
It's interesting. A couple of jobs ago, I actually had a male manager, and he was saying some not quite appropriate
Mm,
remarks. And this was before the Me Too movement.
yeah.
And I remember discussing it. So he was my direct manager, and I actually talked about it to our director, who happened to be a woman.
Mhm.
And this was really interesting, is she said, "Oh, are you sure he's not just boys being boys?" And I was like, "How could you say that?" Like it was just, I
Mm,
was just totally, I came to you vulnerable, expressed my concerns, and you've dismissed it. And it really set me back, because here I was coming to a woman in authority
yeah.
who I trusted, and have it be dismissed. And sure enough, down the road, he was actually let go from his position long after I'd moved on for those very same issues,
Ah.
but somebody else was willing to listen to it. So
Isn't
yeah, that was a lesson that was a very negative lesson to learn, but it was something that I'm sure I wasn't the only one to experience something like that.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, thank you so much for sharing it. It brought up this experience for me, very similar, that I was working, well, consulting in an organization, but treated very much like an employee and part of the family. And it was great in many ways. But I was experiencing some really inappropriate emails from one of the guys and really with that bullying tone. And it wasn't very pleasant at all. And I went to the manager, similar things. She was female. And I was told, I think you're being a bit fragile. I was like gobsmacked. I'm like, what? And I had evidence and all of this, and I just, oh, and I had very similar negative experience. In the end, I made a choice to walk away because that was
Right.
what I needed to do for my health and sanity because I was exhausted, burnout, and experiencing vicarious trauma myself. But again, isn't that so? Like totally different industries,
Yeah.
but still happens. And I'm not talking that long ago.
Nor am I.
Exactly. We're not talking 20 years ago when this stuff wasn't talked about. And it's challenging, but I guess it's, as you said, you did something about it for yourself. You spoke up and then you made your own decision. I did the same. I spoke up, couldn't do it, so I walked away. And sometimes that's about putting those boundaries in place, self preservation, and giving ourselves permission.
Comes
That
back to permission. Yes.
exactly the things that
Yeah.
you have really beautifully articulated are so important. Yeah. So, what other things do you work with the ladies that you work with that you feel are important in their recovery journey? Do you have any other little gentle exercises or tools you'd love to share? Because you've already shared some amazing ones.
And there's another, when we talk about drawing as a coaching forward thinking tool, there's another exercise which was interesting, because what we do is I demonstrate on a video for them what to do. There's a list of questions, and then I meet with them afterwards and we discuss it. It's interesting. A lot of them have said it's the discussion afterwards where they come back and look at, they have a lot of thoughts and feelings come up while they're doing the
Yeah.
exercise, but it's the reflecting afterwards of seeing what subconsciously they put into their pictures. So the
Wow.
exercise was, it was a bridge drawing exercise.
Hmm.
And basically you have things on one side of the shore you'd like to walk away from, that you'd like to leave behind, that you're struggling with.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the shore, whatever that may look like, is the things you want to move towards, the things you're aspiring to, that bring you joy, that light you up, that bring you peace and calm. And you draw a bridge between the two
Yeah.
areas. And it can be any type of bridge,
Hmm.
and there can be any type of obstacles. And so I've met with a number of women and seen everything from the Golden Gate Bridge
Yeah.
to rickety rope bridges to stone
Imagine.
bridges with trolls. Like, it's
Yeah.
really interesting to see what people come up with.
Would be.
But I had one woman say to me, she looked at her bridge and she'd drawn a rickety plank bridge, and each of these planks were obstacles and they were spaced far apart. She was worried she was going to fall between them, and she'd drawn these big waves of water underneath, and it looked very dangerous underneath. And she's, I just realized I drew all these waves and I can't swim. What am I drawing?
Oh, no.
It was just,
Wow.
and it was totally unprompted. It was just real.
Mm.
I laughed because she laughed, and she's like, "Why did I draw this for myself?" And it's just those little moments where you get into the art of creating, and suddenly thoughts and feelings just end up on the page. And it's not till you take that sober second look of go,
Mm.
oh, what does this mean? And a lot of it's up to interpretation, but
Yeah.
we both cracked up after that because it was
Pretty
quite,
funny. But it's
yeah,
so
it was,
powerful, isn't it?
yeah,
Really?
it really was for both of
Yeah.
us. And that was just talking through her drawing, right? And
Mm.
what did this mean to you? And what did that mean to you? And yeah, so it was just that, again, self-awareness, building that self-awareness, because
Yeah.
if you're not aware of your issues, it's really hard to figure out how you want to change them or fix them,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely. And it sounds like it's a beautiful way to bring that unconscious and subconscious stuff to the surface, which we often, yeah, we might really know what's going on, but we've pushed it down so much, and it can bring it up to the surface and make us face it, as
oh,
painful as it
definitely.
can be. But
Yeah, yeah. A lot of that is, yeah. So I really like discussing the work afterwards because there's learnings that come out of that. There's basically three stages of learnings. There's kind of the thinking about what I want to draw, there's the act of drawing, and then there's the reflecting upon the drawing afterwards and what does it mean. So
yeah,
there's a lot of takeaways. And the nice thing is then you can go back to it months later and you'll know exactly how you felt at that moment you were drawing it, which is quite neat.
mm,
It's like I joke, it's a Kodiak moment, right? It's a
yeah,
snapshot of what you were feeling at that moment.
yeah, beautiful. I love that so much. So, Lexi, as we move to wrapping this conversation up, where can our listeners find out more about you and find you online?
I'm quite active on LinkedIn because, again, my audience is professional women, and I really enjoy posting on LinkedIn and connecting. In fact, I've found some wonderful women we've just connected through LinkedIn, and worlds away, exactly, industries away. So I'm quite active there, and also on my website, mindartwellness.com. There's a free challenge. It's like a 5-day email challenge where if you sign up, you get basically a daily creative prompt and a little video of me demonstrating it. So it's called the 5-day reset challenge, a creative reset challenge. So
Man,
yeah, that's a great taster of what the coaching feels like. And then I have a newsletter as well, and I send out a weekly newsletter with, again, links to creative exercises that I write about in blogs and so on. So there's a lot of resources on my website. So I definitely would encourage people to look for me there.
fantastic. And I'll put that in our show notes for sure. So, the 5-day creative reset challenge on your mindartwellness.com website. So I would highly encourage, I know I'll be checking it out
Yeah,
and signing up for the newsletter as well so I can stay connected to you. And I know that our
perfect.
listeners will definitely be very interested in that.
Yeah, and I hope they connect with me on LinkedIn, and all of those same links are there as well in my profile. And you can read more about me and see what I've been up to as well.
Excellent. I'll put all that in the show notes for our listeners to check out. And I always like to wrap up the conversation with a question. What do you think your younger self would think of where you are and what you've achieved now?
Oh, she's going to wonder why I didn't go into fine art because she was convinced she was going to be an artist when she was younger.
Mm,
But I'd like her to see the fact that art and science can live together and produce, it's one of those, they joke about hybrid vigor when you take two different things and you combine them, and the result is more than the sum of the parts. And so I'd like her to go, you're an artist in a different way now, and have her be happy with that.
I love that so much. And really, you've come full circle. The fine arts is what you wanted, and you went into, as you said, to please your parents and pick that path. But you've come full circle and you've beautifully combined both. I love that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and your beautiful resources and your wisdom. It's been very powerful, and I know that our listeners are going to love listening to this episode.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad we finally got to connect after
Yes.
life stopped getting in our way. So,
Exactly. Thank you so much, Lexi. Bye for now.
bye.
Thank you for joining me in this episode of Growing Tall Poppies. It is my deepest hope that today's episode may have inspired and empowered you to step fully into your post-traumatic growth so that you can have absolute clarity around who you are, what matters the most to you, and to assist you to release your negative emotions and regulate your nervous system so you can fully thrive. New episodes are published every Tuesday, and I hope you'll continue to join us as we explore both the strategies and the personal qualities required to fully live a life of post-traumatic growth and to thrive. So if it feels aligned to you and really resonates, then I invite you to hit subscribe, and it would mean the world to us if you could share this episode with others who you feel may benefit too. You may also find me on Instagram at Growing Tall Poppies and Facebook, Dr. Natalie Green. Remember, every moment is an opportunity to look for the lessons and to learn and increase your ability to live the life you desire and deserve. So for now, stay connected, stay inspired, stand tall like the tall poppy you are, and keep shining your light brightly in the world. Bye for now.